In 2023, a woman in rural Virginia was about to become part of a story that spanned 3 states and 2 decades. It would link her to women in the Charlotte area, Raleigh, Florida, and beyond. But at the time, all she knew was she needed urgent medical care. This is Shattered Trust, an all-new investigative series where I unravel the story of the North Carolina nurse practitioner that she saw that day, and the secrets that he kept for decades, as the medical communities looked the other way.
These plants are my favorite. My basil, my mint growing. I got lavender I just planted. I'm Jolene Weaver.
How many chickens do you have?
Right now, 11 hens. I love my garden. I love my animals. Hi, Dolly. And I love my family very much. My health kind of went downhill in September of 2022. That's when all of this big mess kind of started.
When Jolene Weaver walked into this primary urgent care in rural Virginia in early 2023,
it was awful, awful, awful.
She'd had 43 doctor visits. She weighed 97 pounds.
I went in, and the first person to come in
was Keith Henry, a nurse practitioner.
He said, "What's going on?" I told him everything.
He ran her blood work and told her to come back.
It was February 3rd, 2023.
The second visit,
he said, "I'll get into this gown,"
was where it all went wrong.
He came back in the room and he was by himself, and he said, "Okay, stand up and show me, let's look at these lymph nodes." So I stood up, and he, the first one I started going for was one in my armpit, and he was in the front of me. And for that, he was like going and like cupping at my breast, almost like cupping. It was a weird cupping massage type movement. And then he had me lay down. And this is when he came in between my legs and he pulled down my panties.
Jolene testified in court that she tried twice to push his hands away from her vagina. It wasn't part of the examination she was there for, and they were alone. In court, Keith Henry would later deny assaulting her, saying his examination was covered by the medical consent form that she signed.
I signed a waiver for them to do their job properly.
Jolene was confused about what had just happened. She still hoped he held the answers to her health. Sick and vulnerable, when he asked for her cell phone number, she gave it to him.
My phone went off.
Over the next 24 hours, they texted about her test and her symptoms. Henry asked her to come back the next day at closing time.
That was the last time I saw Keith Henry.
She was confused about why. Then she got this text while in the waiting room, saying he should have met her after work.
So that's when my heart just sunk, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going in to see a monster right now. Because everything had hit me and connected.
When she entered Henry's room, she says he asked her to take her shirt off.
And I said, "Take my shirt off? What are you talking about?" He got hesitant and he told me, "Keep your voice down, keep your voice down." And I had stormed out of there, and I don't remember what I was yelling.
Is it your intention to proceed without counsel?
Yes, ma'am.
In a July hearing at the Virginia Nursing Board last year, Keith Henry tried to keep his license.
Did you review the text messages in their entirety?
Jolene Weaver wasn't the only case the nursing board was investigating alongside the criminal process. Months after Jolene, a second woman accused Henry of inappropriately touching her nonverbal autistic child.
What will be clear by the end of today's hearing is that Mr. Henry used his professional position to take advantage of his victims when they were most vulnerable.
That criminal case was eventually dismissed, and Henry maintained he was innocent. But a judge convicted Henry of sexual battery in Jolene's case. Henry appealed, his conviction was upheld, and the case now awaits a second appeal. His Virginia license suspended, but not yet revoked. Back in 2023, Jolene burst into the urgent care a week after that last visit. On a patient feedback tablet, she tapped out what she had to say.
He crossed the line with me, he took advantage of me, and who knows how many other sick patients and women he took advantage of.
When did you learn that you weren't the first?
After I gave my testimony with the detective. I can't imagine what the other people have gone through and how it's affected their life.
I tried to reach Keith Henry and his attorney numerous times as part of this reporting, without success, but I am including his perspective as it appears in numerous public records. This chapter, it's just the beginning. An anonymous tipster reached out to me last year saying I should ask Huntersville police what they knew about Keith Henry. That's chapter 2 of Shattered Trust. May 21st, 2018. The Huntersville Police Department got a call.
Yes.
A young woman told police a man had sexually assaulted her as a child, repeatedly, between 2002 and 2008. The name on the suspect sheet, Keith Henry. When I pulled the police records for the case, it was marked as inactive, with leads exhausted.
The biggest challenge is that any physical evidence that was there 10 years ago is not there now. And that's a big hurdle to overcome in some of these cases.
Assistant Police Chief Brian Vaughn agreed to talk about the case with me, but there's limits on what he can say.
We did not have enough probable cause to get warrants to get Mr. Henry under arrest. You really have one good shot at taking a case to a grand jury and presenting all the evidence to them.
In the 2000s, when Keith Henry was accused of assaulting the Huntersville girl, court records and his own resume say he was working as a nurse at a number of hospitals around North Carolina. His North Carolina license was still active in 2018, as was his Florida license. What did your office do when you learned that information?
Within a couple of weeks of us getting the report, our detectives contacted the state nursing board to let them know that this accusation had come forward.
If you look at Keith Henry's nursing license record in North Carolina, you won't see a public record of that report from Huntersville Police. We traveled to Raleigh to ask why.
So my name is Meredith Paris. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for the board. Our legal mandate is to protect the public.
Are you able to confirm or deny the existence of an investigation if it doesn't result in public action?
We are not able to disclose what doesn't result in public action.
The North Carolina Board of Nursing's authority is limited by the state's Nursing Practice Act. When Huntersville Police alerted the board to their investigation, it involved allegations outside Henry's job.
If it's outside of the Nursing Practice Act, we don't have the authority to do that.
Charges never materialized, so his license remained intact. Keith Henry kept practicing and found himself in Virginia in 2023.
It should have never, ever happened.
That's where he was convicted of assaulting his patient, Jolene Weaver, a conviction upheld on appeal.
We will be taking action, and I will be recommending suspension of his license for a minimum of 10 years based on the convictions that occurred in June.
Months after that interview, the North Carolina Nursing Board stayed true to that promise. But Henry's suspension is not for 10 years. It's for just 12 months.
North Carolina is a right-to-work state, and occupational licenses are a property right. We don't have the authority under the Practice Act to issue a permanent revocation of a license.
Saw Dr. Keith Henry.
It's a decision years too late
Of a sick
for
woman
Jolene.
who knows how many other patients. Nobody was listening. Nobody was doing their job. He still was allowed to see innocent patients and to practice his sick ways.
When I got the records for your office's investigation, it was marked at that time as inactive and it needs exhausted. What is the status now on that case?
You brought some additional information to the police department that I don't think that we were quite aware of the specifics, and that has given us the ability to reopen our case, and it's actually an active investigation now.
I tried several times to reach Keith Henry and his defense attorney as part of this reporting process without success. But I am including his perspective as it appears in numerous public records. Now, you'll be hearing from the North Carolina Board of Nursing again because 2018 wasn't their first time to evaluate Keith Henry's nursing license. The first of several opportunities actually dates back to 2001 when they first gave him his nursing license, because that was mere weeks after two women in Florida had accused Keith Henry of violence. That's chapter 3 of Shattered Trust. Just outside Tampa, a nurse at Meese Countryside Hospital is making her rounds. She would tell police later, fellow nurse Keith Henry asked for a hug before forcing her into a small room meant for preparing snacks. I I found this police report where she told them he lifted her shirt and assaulted her. Too scared to scream, the 19-year-old was eventually able to push him away and go to her boss, who called police, leading to this report. Keith Henry denied assaulting her and said he only hugged her. A few weeks later, a prosecutor dropped the charges.
I'm trying to locate.
I tried to find out why,
with a Keith Allen Henry,
but couldn't reach the victim or police involved after all these years. The prosecutor who dropped the charges died in 2021. 2 months after those charges dropped, a different woman filed a domestic violence restraining order against Henry in Pasco County, Florida. By that time, Keith Henry was applying for his nursing license in North Carolina. The North Carolina Nursing Board gave it to him a few weeks after that restraining order, and Keith Henry started a new job at a Raleigh hospital.
My name is Meredith Paris. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for the board. All applicants are required to do a criminal background check, and they do that through SBI and also the FBI.
2 women had accused this man of something violent in the months prior to him getting his license in North Carolina. Why would that not raise any red flags?
So I can't say that the board was aware of that history at the time. If it's not related to the nursing practice, we have to look at a conviction, and in both of those instances, you cited they were dismissals.
Keith Henry would have a lot of conversations with police and the North Carolina Nursing Board in 2002 and 2003. November 2002, Wake County prosecutors charged him with embezzling from an employer, a case that also gets dismissed. He jumps around 3 different hospitals in Raleigh. He loses his nursing license for 6 months for issues with patient care. And then, July 17, 2003, the Wake County Sheriff's Office issues a warrant for his arrest. 2 young girls at this small Presbyterian church in Raleigh accused him of assaulting them. The case goes to trial, the juror's verdict, not guilty. Family members of the girls didn't want to interview for this series, but they told me the children's memories didn't hold up after the 2 years it took to get to trial.
It's kind of normal for me.
I visited the man who was Wake County's elected district attorney at the time.
I was the district attorney here for 27 years.
I was trying to get answers.
You try the case and you put your heart into it and the jury comes back not guilty. That's very disappointing.
Colin Willoughby did not directly prosecute this case and so couldn't discuss its details. But he did agree to give insight into the challenges of prosecuting child sex crimes.
For child victims, their recollection is more difficult because it's hard for a young child to give a temporal range of when something happens.
Investigating and prosecuting these types of crimes also looked different in the early 2000s.
We have better training now. We have more resources available to us. We understand more about how to deal with child victims than we did then.
Do you think that juries find it easier to believe children now than 20 years ago?
I don't know. The ability of a child to articulate and tell a jury in a courtroom where you're sitting on a stand and all these strangers are there to talk about something that happened to you and do it in a way that adults can understand exactly what you're saying is difficult.
Do you think that there was a failing at any point of that way that could have been stopped earlier than it was? That's 25 years as a practicing nurse and a nurse practitioner where numerous times he's accused of something and nothing happens.
This person appears to be what sometimes we refer to as a gypsy, that in the regulatory realm where they go one place and they get in trouble and they move.
I spent a year investigating this case, combing through hundreds of pages of public records and talking to people impacted. And as I tried to understand it, I came across this line buried in Keith Henry's 500-page divorce record from 2008. A judge, in her findings of fact, found that Keith Henry had repeatedly shown a lack of honesty in court throughout the process and showed signs of narcissistic behavior. He was dishonest in court. Now, I've tried to reach Keith Henry and his attorney several times as part of this reporting process without success. But I've included his perspective as I found it in these public records, because none of this would have a long-term impact on Keith Henry's ongoing employment. He would continue jumping hospitals across North Carolina for years, never in one place for long. That's Chapter 4 of Shattered Trust.
When did you first meet Keith Henry?
I met him in October.
In late 2022, Janelle Ondo was a new nurse practitioner at primary and urgent care's clinics in Northern Virginia.
It was chaotic and hectic and overwhelming.
She didn't know about Keith Henry's past. Accused at this point by 3 women and 2 children of violence or sexual assault. But their relationship quickly went south after an exchange where she says she asked him for medical advice for one of her patients.
And he was sitting in the chair, and I was standing here, and he leaned forward and he pressed his hand into my hip. It's degrading, it's embarrassing, it's unsettling. I went back and I cried and I texted her.
She showed me the frantic text she sent her friend that day, too personal to share publicly. I tried to reach Keith Henry and his attorney about this allegation, as well as all of this reporting, without success. By late 2022, Keith Henry's resume indicates he had worked for at least 20 medical institutions since the mid-90s, almost never longer than 2 years. Most of them are in North Carolina, and because many are private institutions, they weren't legally required to respond to our request to verify his employment. 2 of them, however, were public. At both UNC facilities he worked at in the 2000s, a spokesperson told us he had either been terminated or resigned in lieu of termination. Still, he always managed to move on and find another job. In Virginia, 24 years of new jobs were about to catch up to him.
My instant reaction was to grab his hands, and I pulled him back.
Henry was convicted of sexually assaulting Jolene Weaver in early 2023, a few months after Janelle says he touched her inappropriately.
Taking advantage
Jolene
of
Weaver's verdict was upheld on appeal, and later that year, Janelle Ondo and 3 other female nurse practitioners shared a startling discovery.
It was terrorizing, thinking, what did I do?
All of them have been reported to the Virginia Nursing Board.
The wording of the complaints, they were basically copy and pasted.
Today, Keith Henry faces felony charges for forging those complaints against the woman, all in other people's names. As the forgery case dragged on, the Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office did more digging into Henry's cell phone and filed new charges of possession of child pornography, charges that have now put Henry behind bars without a chance to post bail.
I think Detective Cat was the first person who gave me any kind of ear and listened and took me seriously.
I speak for the unspoken.
Today, a trail of women are left scarred and angry at a regulatory system that left him licensed for 24 years.
We should have been protected, and we weren't. We've all been failed.
In Jolene's criminal case, it was a full year and a second patient's accusation before she says the clinic and the Virginia Nursing Board addressed her report of assault.
It should have never, ever happened. It should have stopped at me. It should have happened years before myself.
Before he ever darkened the doors of this Virginia clinic, the 5 women and children of North Carolina and Florida, who we aren't naming, Jolene and Janelle tell me they speak for them.
I worry that there are women out there who are afraid to speak out because it's uncomfortable, it's degrading, it's embarrassing, it's nerve-wracking, it's everything negative, right? Nothing makes you feel good about it, except that's the only way you can make it stop.
What do you hope for from the publishing of this series?
I would hope that policy would change, that background checks would be performed, that women's complaints would be taken seriously, that they wouldn't be dismissed.
And I can be strong for everyone and do what's right and stand up. Because this is the right, and this is the right and the change that we need.